Hi everybody, welcome to Comics Tuesday, and today I'm going to be talking about one of my favorite comic book stories, The Killing Joke. No, I'm actually not touching that one. I'm going to be talking about Carnage U.S.A. Have you perhaps not heard of that? If so, it's probably because there's a sea of carnage going on in the past few years. But Carnage U.S.A. is a mini-series with the primary antagonist being Carnage, that is, a serial killer who then ends up being cellmates with Venom and receiving a version of Venom's alien symbiote. He next shows up in Maximum Carnage, which was this very polarizing 92-part mega event going across all 10 Spider-Man titles. I like it. I'm not going to go into detail on that today, because that's a topic for another day. But after Maximum Carnage, you really didn't see him for a while. And my thinking is it's probably because in the Spider-Man books, we're having a really bad problem with event after event with decreasing quality. It kind of tainted Spider-Man for a while. So they just had to tell one consistent narrative to try and recover. But as time went on, they brought Carnage back in the beginning of New Avengers, which didn't really have Spider-Man fighting Carnage. Instead, Sentry grabbed hold of him and, well, made him feel like half a man. But it's comic books, so he got better. And that happened in a miniseries aptly titled Carnage. This miniseries featured Spider-Man and Iron Man teaming up to take on Carnage, and it was neither good or bad. Not a whole lot happened. Primarily two things. First, they unkilled Carnage. And second, they bring in some of the symbiote-based technology that kind of sets up Tony Stark's Endosym suit from the Superior Iron Man. But then after that you have Carnage U.S.A. That's the good one. And then it's followed up with Minimum Carnage, which is a crossover featuring Scarlet Spider, aka Kane, and the Agent Venom version of Venom. I want to love it, but it's not good. Anyway, that's sort of the history of Carnage. As far as the story itself, I'm going to kind of give you some of my pros and cons on it, let you know what I think of it. The pros, of course, includes the art. Take one look at this, and you'll be slack-jawed. The art conveys so profoundly all the textures and motion, and it gives this really creepy vibe, but it's not really too overbearing. You have things like the costumes on Spider-Man and Captain America look amazing, and they look heroic, but it also has a distinctly violent and bleak feel to it. And all the covers have this like twisted Americana theme that's really great. Also on the covers are little gags where it has the credits down on the bottom. There's all these like super American things thrown in, which kind of feels like a throwback to some classic Stan Lee work, you know, where they would credit like Jackass Jack Kirby or something. Also, the story features the Avengers prominently, but it's a unique team of Avengers, so that's kind of like a breath of fresh air, not like they're trying to plug the Mighty Avengers team, or the New Avengers team, or the Uncanny Avengers team, or the somewhat drunken mediocre Avengers. No, in the story they explain that they're in such a hurry they just take whoever happens to be around Spider-Man at the time. The story also takes every opportunity it can get to throw in some humor, and kind of breaks up some of the heavy, dark tones that it has. And the characters. Every single character in the story is acting very in character. Especially Captain America. They did a really great job showing why I love Captain America. Now here are some of the things that I didn't like about this story. First and foremost is it fits into the long-running theme that Spider-Man can't seem to take care of his own business anymore. In this story, he takes an Avengers team. He teams up with Venom. They also send in this like special military symbiote force. Personally, I give it a little bit of a pass there, because nowhere in the title of the book does it say Spider-Man. But moving on, we have the humor that I mentioned before. Because of some of the themes in the story, it's kind of just a little bit jarring when somebody will crack a joke. Because there's a dude running around murdering children and all of a sudden you have a witticism. Well, good for you, you insensitive bastard. Probably one of the bigger flaws that isn't this story's fault, but still exists in the story, is Spider-Man is completely against killing Carnage. But not only that, everyone else is. Like, nobody, goes through with it. And I know that it's just so they can keep the character around, and it's kind of baldly obvious in a lot of the big Carnage stories. Because, really, you would need to put this dude down. It just doesn't feel quite right that they're, cuffing him and hauling him away for like another month till he comes out and kills a few thousand more people. And lastly, for the negative aspects, is some of the dialogue just is very comic booky. It's not the way real people talk. And if you're like me, you just find it charming. So, all said and done here, I really like this story. I don't have much ill to say about it. If you're worried about spoilers, if you don't want to know all the events of the book, then this video ends right here and now for you. If you want to read it yourself, just go out and do that. Come back here, we'll talk about it. If you don't care about spoilers, then you hold on to your ass. Because I'm going to tell you what's what about this story. So it starts off showing Spider-Man just kind of palling around with the Avengers when a call comes in that Carnage is out carnaging. And what it amounts to is he's gone into this little rural town and he started putting his symbiote suit in all the residents. So by the time the Avengers show up, Carnage is kind of puppeteering this whole town. All the men, women, and children are all completely under his control, scared senseless, because he could kill any one of them at any moment. And so the Avengers kind of go in, engage Carnage, and we have kind of a diabolus ex machina here. And the Avengers are taken over by Carnage. All but Spider-Man, of course. And so Spider-Man's having to deal with psychotic murder Avengers. And that's really interesting to see, by the way. But some uninfected villagers come and save Spider-Man. The story moves along, and you see some government-type individuals setting up a team of soldiers and assassins and what have you, all armed with symbiotes. You have Scorn and Phage and Lasher and Dasher and Vixen and Skippy, all ready to go take on Carnage. Meanwhile, Spider-Man's trying to get his bearings, figure out some way to turn things around. The Avengers are under Carnage's control. Captain America has a great moment. Pow! But finally, the special forces show up and start dealing with all the civilians of the town that are all carnaged up. And Spider-Man finally gets back into the fray here and throws down with Carnage. Then Venom shows up, and she gets real. And we love every second of it. But he shows up, and at this point in time, Spider-Man hadn't seen him in the sleek Agent Venom look yet. It's possibly the first time I've seen him. I'm not exactly sure where this falls into the timeline. But Spider-Man sees Agent Venom there. He has this really great line. He says, "Crap, the Punisher's dressed like me." Venom and Carnage begin to fight. Through some appropriately placed technology, both Venom and Carnage's symbiotes are forced to leave. And at this point in time, some things that have been set up for a really long time pay off. And possibly the most interesting action scene in this whole story happens. You see, I mentioned before that that Carnage was ripped in half by the Sentry, you know, killed. But even after he was unkilled and brought back, Carnage has no legs. Like, from the waist down, he's standing on his symbiote suit. But also, Venom, Flash Thompson, the whole reason that they chose to venom him up is because he had lost his legs as well. So that was an incentive for him to participate. So now without their suits, you have a very fresh take on the Venom Carnage fight. You have these two men who hate each other and at the moment have limited mobility. And their fight is so brutal. They're stabbing and biting. Literally biting one another. It is knockout, drag out all the way. But once the suits return, Venom comes out ahead, defeats Carnage, and Venom is pretty much the big hero of this story. They take Carnage's suit away, they are wrapping things up nice and neat, and they try their best to address the fact that Batman won't kill the Joker. Sorry, I mean that Spider-Man won't kill Carnage. Won't even let anybody else do it. And I swear they try their best to make it make sense. Venom was about to do it. This close to doing it. But he wouldn't want to disappoint Spider-Man, which is totally in line with Flash Thompson, day one, idolizes Spider-Man. So that makes sense. But Wolverine is there and says to them, how can you not kill this guy? And the part that is just kind of frustrating is Wolverine doesn't do it himself. But all in all, that's the story. And this is one of my favorites, especially out of the ones featuring Carnage. This is, like I said, beautifully drawn. It has a lot of my favorite characters portrayed very well. It has some great action in it. It's a great lead up to a lot of other more modern stories, for better or worse. And let me tell you something. Hearing me tell you how the story plays out, not nearly as good as reading it yourself. So, if anything here interests you, go check it out. That's it for this week. So now it's time for the viewer question of the week, which is, what's your favorite way to read comic books? For myself, I love to read single issues digitally on Marvel.com, Marvel Unlimited. If I'm going for long continuous stories, trade paperback all the way. Do you agree? Do you have a different opinion? Do you not read comic books? Tell me all about it down in the comment section below. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time for Comics Tuesday. And on the next Comics Tuesday, it's a Secret Wars. It's a secret. Next week I have a Secret Wars Spectacular.